Clashes started on Wednesday with rocks being hurled from both sides of the border. But by Thursday, shooting had broken out in what is the heaviest fighting in years between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Poor demarcation of the border since the collapse of the Soviet Union has led to regular skirmishes over land and water between the two now independent nations. On Thursday, a truce was agreed, but it didn't hold. On Friday, there was a new push for peace.
We've met with the colonel, the head of the Tajik security service, and others. The meeting went well. We met on neutral ground. Things are about to improve.
Over 10,000 Kyrgyz citizens have been evacuated from two districts that border Tajikistan, where the fighting has been most intense. Authorities in Kyrgyzstan say more than 20 homes, a school and 8 shops have been set on fire during the clashes. China is now calling for calm.
No one is questioning that ceasefire agreements and peace talks between the Myanmar army and some of the major armed ethnic groups are now either paused or outright dead. About a dozen rebel groups have announced their support for the anti-coup uprising on the streets, some even protecting protesters from security forces as the crackdown became more violent. There are nearly 24 armed ethnic groups, mostly in the borderlands, that for decades have been fighting the Myanmar military for greater autonomy. Some feel that while each of the ethnic armies has their own objectives, the current situation could draw them together as they coordinate against the military. It might be a short-lived, loose alliance, though, as there are many rivalries and individual agreements between them. But there's a new element: the urban-based protesters, mostly from the majority Bamar ethnicity, who are now banding together with the minority communities.
Turkey has entered its first full lockdown since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Turkey has previously issued a series of partial lockdowns since the pandemic began last month. The country has recorded more than 4.7 million COVID cases nationwide, resulting in over 39,000 deaths. The 3-week lockdown is set to end May 17th if cases begin to fall.
The biggest UK military operation since Iraq and Afghanistan is underway in the West African state of Mali. 300 British soldiers have joined part of what the UN is calling the most dangerous peacekeeping mission in the world. Nearly 250 UN troops have lost their lives since the mission began 8 years ago. Mali is suffering from a rise in violent Islamist extremism coupled with severe poverty. It has a scattered population of 20 million people, and the size of the country alone makes it very difficult to counter the threat with limited security forces.
Alleged underworld boss Nafiz Modak and 3 others have been arrested in connection with the murder of top cop Charles Kinnear. Kinnear, an anti-gang detective, was gunned down outside his Bishop Lavis home in Cape Town in September last year. He was investigating gun running and gang activity at the time of his shooting.
Sally, the Hawks released a statement not so long ago talking about the arrest of 4 suspects, and they're not naming any of them. And so I've been looking at the other media reports, and they naming one of the suspects as Nafiz Modak, and as I said in the Hawks statement, they're not naming any of the suspects. Now, according to the statement, these 4 men aged between 29 and 49 were arrested earlier today in Cape Town.
In Sri Lanka, the war on terror is turning into a war on religion. The Lankan cabinet has approved a complete ban on the burqa. It's just a matter of time before the parliament does the same. Muslims in Sri Lanka are enraged, but the government says burqas are a threat to national security.
The war on terror takes many forms. The Americans launched one 2 decades back. A series of invasions and battles followed. The global consensus is that the war failed, because America killed terrorists, not the ideology behind them. Today, Sri Lanka is making the same mistake. Their war on terror began 2 years back, on that fateful Easter Sunday in 2019. Groups allied with the Islamic State bombed churches and hotels.
What I can tell you is that President Felix Tshisekedi cites Article 85 of the Constitution, which states that, I quote, if severe circumstances immediately threaten the independence or integrity of the national territory, then the president may proclaim a state of siege or a state of emergency. Now, of course, the government hasn't said exactly what this measure would entail. More details are expected in the coming hours via a presidential decree, which is expected to be issued later this Saturday. In any case, it's worth mentioning that the announcement comes just days after Prime Minister Sama Lukonde suggested putting in place a state of emergency in the east of the country to stop the deadly violence there. The Prime Minister suggesting replacing the civil administration with a military administration and beefing up military presence in the area.